pale, her clothes torn slightly, dirt smudged across her arms and face. Her breathing was shallow, barely noticeable at first glance. But she was alive. Daniel quickly checked her pulse. Weak, but there. Stay with me, he said firmly. His voice steady despite the urgency building inside him. Behind him, the puppy let out a Daniel turned his head slightly. The puppy had run straight to the woman. It circled her once, then pressed gently against her side, whining softly now, no longer frantic, but filled with something deeper. Relief, fear, love. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the interaction. You love her, he muttered. The puppy looked up at him briefly, as if confirming, then returned his attention to the woman, nudging her lightly with his nose. The woman stirred. Barely. A faint sound escaped her lips. Daniel leaned closer. Hey, stay with me, he said again, more urgently now. You're going to be okay. Her eyes fluttered slightly, struggling to open, confused, disoriented. Am I? She whispered weakly. Her voice was barely audible. Daniel glanced at the puppy again, then back at her. Your dog? He asked gently. Her lips moved again. A faint nod. Daniel exhaled slowly, the realization settling in. This wasn't random. The puppy hadn't been wandering. It had been searching, looking for help, looking for him. His chest tightened slightly. If he had ignored it, if he had walked away, he pushed the thought aside quickly. No time for that now. Daniel reached for his radio immediately. Dispatch, this is Officer Daniel, he said firmly. I've located an injured civilian. Female, conscious, but weak. Possible trauma. I need medical assistance immediately. Copy that, the voice responded. Units and paramedics are on the way. Daniel set the radio down, turning his full attention back to the woman. Help is coming, he assured her. The puppy stayed pressed against her, its small body trembling slightly, but it didn't leave her side. It had done its job. It had found help, but it wasn't done yet. Daniel carefully looked around the area again, piecing things together. The drag marks, the broken branches, the torn fabric. This hadn't been an accident. Something had happened here. Something serious. His jaw tightened. But right now, the priority was clear. Keep her conscious. Keep her breathing. He gently adjusted her position, making sure she was as stable as possible. Stay with me, he repeated softly. Her eyes flickered again, a little more aware this time. You don't leave, she whispered. Daniel shook his head slightly. I'm not going anywhere, he said. The puppy let out a soft whine, licking her hand gently. The woman's fingers twitched in response, and in that small, fragile moment, everything became clear. This tiny animal had saved her life. Daniel looked at the puppy again, something shifting in his expression. Respect, amazement, and something deeper. Because this wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. This was loyalty, pure, unquestionable. And if he hadn't refused to give up, he never would have found her in time. Not even close.
25 views na
Daniel's
nagkuhan mo
focus
nagtanaw.
snapped fully into place. There was no more confusion, no more hesitation, only urgency. He leaned closer to the woman, keeping his voice steady, control. Stay with me, all right?
Siligi, good mati.
He said. Her breathing was still shallow, uneven. Every second mattered. Daniel quickly removed his jacket, folding it and gently placing it under her head to keep her stable. He checked her pulse again, still weak, but holding. Come on, stay with me, he muttered under his breath. The puppy stayed pressed against her side, whining softly now, its body trembling with every breath she took. It didn't leave, not even for a second. Daniel glanced at it briefly. You did good, he said quietly. But the puppy didn't react. It was completely focused on her, as if nothing else in the world mattered. Daniel shifted slightly, scanning her for visible injuries. There were no obvious wounds, but the signs were clear. Something serious had happened. Internal, or impact-related. Either way, time wasn't on their side. He closed his radio again. Dispatch, what's the ETA?
Tanaw ka.
He asked, his tone sharper now. 3 minutes out, came the response. 3 minutes.
Tanaw
It
ka.
felt too long.
Hindi.
Daniel looked back down at the woman, her eyes fluttered
Kung
again.
tanaw man ka nga ikaw may nakauna,
"Okay,
nag-una
stay
na.
with me," he said quickly, gently tapping her shoulder. "Look at me. You're okay. Just keep your eyes open." She tried, but
Chismosa
it
lang.
was a struggle.
Chismos.
"Cole," she whispered faintly. "I know," Daniel said, adjusting his jacket around her more securely. "Just hang on." The puppy let out a small, distressed sound, licking her hand again, as if trying to wake her. Daniel's jaw
Come
tightened.
on.
"Come on, Puppies," he murmured. The silence around them felt heavier now. Every breath, every second, louder. Then, a distant sound broke through. Sirens, faint at first, but getting closer. Daniel exhaled sharply. "All right, good," he said under his breath. He leaned closer again. "You hear that?" he said softly to her. "That's for you. You're going to be okay." Her eyes barely opened this time, but they moved. Just enough. The puppy's ears perked up slightly at the sound of the sirens. But it
Sige,
didn't
go.
move away. It stayed right where
Sige,
it was,
utong.
guarding her, waiting. Daniel
Sige,
looked
utong.
down at both of them, something tightening in his chest again.
Sige lang, utong lang. Sige.
Had carried all of this alone.
Hmm.
Until now,
Bebe.
the sirens grew louder, closer,
Bebe. Come,
fast.
bebe.
Daniel raised his hand slightly, ready to signal them in. "Over here," he called out. Moments later, the paramedics rushed into view, moving quickly toward them with equipment in hand. "What do we have?" one of them asked immediately. "Injured female," Daniel replied. "Weak pulse, semi-conscious, possible internal trauma." They nodded, already moving into action. "All right, we've got her," one said, kneeling beside her. Daniel shifted back slightly, giving him space, but he didn't step far. Not yet. He stayed close, watching, as they worked, because even though help had arrived, this still wasn't over. Not until she made it through. And right now, it was still a race against time. Daniel stepped back slightly as the paramedics worked, his eyes never leaving the woman or the small puppy pressed against her side. "Careful, easy," one of the medics said as they began checking her vitals more thoroughly. Another adjusted equipment, moving quickly but calmly. Professional, precise. But Daniel barely heard them, because his attention kept drifting back to the puppy. It hadn't moved, not even when the paramedics arrived. Not when strangers surrounded her. Not when everything became louder, faster, more intense. It stayed right there, close, protective, its small body still trembling, its eyes fixed on her face as if waiting for something, anything, to change. Daniel swallowed slowly, something heavy building in his chest. "You stayed with her this whole time," he murmured quietly. The words weren't meant for anyone, just a thought, but it hit him harder than expected. Because now, everything was clear. The following, the barking, the urgency, the refusal to leave. It all made sense. The puppy hadn't been lost. It had been searching, running, looking for help, for someone who would listen, for someone who wouldn't ignore it. Daniel's jaw tightened. A single thought pushed its way forward. What if I had walked away? The question hit him like a weight. What if he had ignored it like he almost did? What if he had dismissed it as just another stray? What if he hadn't turned back? His chest tightened, because he already knew the answer. She wouldn't have been found. Not in time. Not in this place. Not like this. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. "That dog," one of the paramedics said quietly, glancing at it. "It led you here?"
Make,
Daniel nodded slightly.
paliw ko tong trapo nga yelo, Make.
His voice lower now. He didn't give up.
Tong
The paramedic
trapo nga yelo.
a hint of disbelief in his expression.
Yung sa gawas.
Daniel didn't respond, because incredible didn't feel like the right word. Not anymore. This wasn't
Puti
just
na po.
something impressive. This was something deep.
Ayun na.
Something
Tuto dito.
that didn't have a simple explanation. He looked at the
Ngay
puppy
pagka...
again. It finally shifted slightly,
Kuha.
pressing closer as the medics prepared to put the woman onto a stretcher. It let out a soft whine, low, emotional, almost like it understood what was happening. Daniel crouched down slightly, closer to it this time. "Hey," he said quietly. The puppy didn't, not immediately. Its attention stayed on her, still focused, still loyal. Daniel felt something in his chest tighten again. "You knew she needed help," he said softly.
Hindi mo hibuti.
The
Pero
puppy
ka nang
finally
mga
glanced at
dirty
him
white.
for a brief second.
Kaya ka bilbil. Nan.
But it was enough. There was something in that look. Not confusion, not fear,
Abi.
but awareness. Then it turned back to her again. Then
Ayog basa.
almost to himself. Yeah, he whispered. You knew. He stood back up as the paramedics carefully lifted her onto the stretcher. The puppy moved alongside her, refusing to be separated, staying as close as it possibly could. Daniel watched it, his expression no
Napapunta
longer just
limpyo.
focus. Now, there was something else there. Respect, and something deeper. Because in all his years, he had never seen anything like this. Not even close. The stretcher locked into place with a sharp click. All right, let's move. One of the paramedics said, gripping the hands.
Balhin ta mo dito gamay ha. Uman mo gamay ha.
Just enough to give him space. But his eyes never left the woman as they carried her carefully down the narrow path. The puppy stayed right beside them. Every step, every movement. It didn't fall behind, didn't hesitate. It followed as closely as its small legs allowed, letting out soft, anxious whines as if trying to stay connected to her with every breath. Easy there, one of the medics said gently, glancing down at him. We've got it. But the puppy didn't seem convinced. Daniel walked alongside them now, matching their pace. His presence steady, grounded. But inside, everything still felt tight, unsettled. They reached the end of the path where the ambulance was waiting. Its back doors already open. Right. Oh, ready. On three, a medic said. 1, 2, 3. They lifted the stretcher into the ambulance, smoothly, securing it in place. Daniel stepped closer instinctively, watching as they adjusted monitors and equipment around her. Pulse is still weak, one of them said. We need to move now. The puppy stopped just outside the ambulance. For the first time, it hesitated, its small body frozen at the edge, looking up at the open doors, then back at Daniel, confused, unsure. Daniel crouched slightly, his voice softer now. It's okay, he said gently. Go on. The puppy looked at him for a second, then back at her. Then, without another moment of hesitation, it jumped inside, carefully, awkwardly, but determined. The paramedics exchanged a brief look. Then one of them nodded. Let us stay, he said quietly. It's not going anywhere anyway. The loud slam echoed for a moment. Then, silence, followed immediately by the sharp sound of the siren starting up again. The ambulance pulled away quickly, tires gripping the pavement as it sped off down the road. Daniel stood still, watching it disappear. His hands rested on his hips, his breathing finally beginning to slow, but his mind,
Umot
it was
lang.
still racing. Everything had happened so
Sumon.
fast, too fast. And yet, if they had been even a few minutes later,
Ang babae ni.
didn't let it
Ang
finish.
lalaki.
Ikado ha.
He looked down at the empty
Permero.
the broken
Primero.
branches, the disturbed ground, the place
Ang
where it all
permero
could
ka.
have ended differently. Then
Laki.
he looked back toward the road, where the ambulance
Ay,
had
babae
gone.
gihapon.
His jaw tightened slightly. Hang in there, he said quietly, almost to himself, because now there was nothing left to do but wait and hope. Hours passed, long, quiet, heavy hours. Daniel sat outside the
Pulbel.
hospital, his elbows resting
Kini
on his
ikadwa ako
knees,
karya siya.
his hands loosely clasped together. The early
Ay, ang
morning
sagday lang na sa bilbil diha.
into afternoon, but time didn't feel normal anymore. It felt stretched, uneven, like every minute carried more weight than it should. Beside him, the puppy for the first time since everything happened, it was still
Oo, ang
not
gwardiya.
restless, not pacing,
Ang
just
gwardiya.
breathing, its small chest rising and falling slowly. Its eyes
Dili
half
ka pa.
open as if it refused to
Dili ka
fully
pa,
relax.
lilion.
Daniel glanced down at it. You're still holding
Dili
on,
ka lang
huh?
nalili.
He said
Ka lang
quietly.
maliligo.
The puppy didn't respond, but its ears twitched slightly. It was listening, always listening. Daniel leaned back slightly in his seat, staring ahead at the hospital entrance. People came and went, nurses, visitors, families.
Ayaw, kaya wa
None of them
nagkadlaw.
reacted the same way. His focus stayed locked on one thing, waiting for news, waiting for an answer. He exhaled slowly, running a
Naapa.
hand through his hair. Come on, he murmured under his breath. He
Nanay bibi si Gamay.
Waiting wasn't something
Sunod
he
ikaw
had
na
to
po. Sunod adlaw.
There was always something to do, something to fix. But here, there was nothing, just uncertainty. The puppy shifted slightly, lifting its head.
Ikaw na po
Its
sunod
eyes moved
adlaw.
toward the hospital doors, focused, alert. Daniel noticed immediately. You hear something? He asked. The puppy stood up slowly now, its body more awake than before. Its tail didn't wag, but it wasn't tense either. It just stood there, watching. Daniel
Bell,
gaze.
bell,
A few seconds later, the doors opened.
bell.
A doctor stepped out, scanning the area briefly. Daniel stood up instantly. That's him, he said quietly. The puppy moved closer to his side. Together, they walked forward. Doctor, Daniel called out, his voice steady, but tight underneath. The doctor turned toward them. For a brief second, his expression was unreadable, and that second felt longer than it should have. Daniel's chest tightened. How is she? He asked. The doctor paused. Then, a small smile appeared. She's stable, he said. Daniel exhaled sharply,
Holiday mo di
the
ugma
tension
no.
releasing all at once. Both of them, the doctor added. Daniel blinked slightly. Both. The doctor nodded. Yes, he said. She's going to recover. Daniel closed his eyes briefly.
Ali bel.
Thank
Ali.
God, he whispered. Beside
Ya ka oh.
the puppy's ears perked up. It didn't fully understand the words, but it felt the shift, the change. Its tail gave a small, cautious wag. Daniel looked down at it, a faint smile finally breaking through. You hear that? He said softly. She made it. The puppy looked up at him, then back toward the hospital doors. Its body no longer tense, no longer desperate, just calm. For the first time since this began, Daniel straightened slightly, looking back at the doctor. Can we see her? He asked. The doctor nodded. In a little while, he said. She's resting now. Daniel nodded in return. That's fine, because now they weren't racing against time anymore. They had made it through, and that alone was everything. A little while later, Daniel stood quietly just outside the hospital room. Through the small glass window, he could see her, resting, still pale, still weak, but alive. Machines monitored her condition with soft, steady beeps, each one a reminder that she had made it through. Beside her bed, the puppy, curled up close, its tiny body pressed gently against the blanket, as if making sure she was really there, as if making sure she wasn't going anywhere again. Daniel let out a slow breath. A nurse stepped beside him, her voice calm. She's been asking about him,
Ano po
she
do?
said softly. Daniel
Ano po di
glanced at
katulo?
her. The dog. The nurse nodded.
Ano po di
She
katulo?
said his name is Milo. Daniel looked back through the glass. Milo, he repeated quietly. It fit. The nurse continued gently. She lives alone.
Katulo
That
na po.
little one is all she
May
has.
katulo.
They're very close. Daniel's expression softened slightly.
Ma'am.
That explains a lot. He
Ito
murmured.
Gamay oh.
The nurse nodded again. She said they were out for a walk earlier, she added. She must have fallen. Maybe hit something she doesn't remember everything clearly yet. Daniel's eyes shifted slightly as he processed it. The broken branches, the ground, the drag marks. It all made sense now. She hadn't been left there.
Simon.
She had fallen,
Huh?
and no one had seen
Gawas na ako.
except Milo. Daniel looked
Ang
back
ulo.
inside again.
Wala
The
eh.
puppy lifted its head
Wala pa
slightly,
man.
as if sensing his presence. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Daniel felt it again. That same quiet understanding. You stayed with her, he said softly, almost to himself. The nurse smiled faintly.
Oh.
He never left her
Suko
side,
si
she said. Even in
si
the
Mama
moments
Gamay.
he said
Wala oh. Wala. Oh.
shaking his head.
Close tag close. Oh.
That's
Sige lang. Diya lang ah.
or something like that.
Oh.
The nurse
Awayon ka.
glanced
Ikaw na po
also
ang
said something
awayon.
else, she added.
Oh.
Daniel looked at her. She remembers Milo running off.
Hinim
The nurse
si
said.
Gamay mo dool
At
sa imo
first,
imo
she
mga
thought
awayon.
that's fair.
Karon ikaw na po ang
Daniel's gaze
awayon.
shifted again, back to the puppy. But he didn't run away, he said quietly. The nurse shook her head. No, she said softly. He went to find help. Silence settled between them for a moment. Daniel looked through the glass again, watching Milo rest beside her, completely at peace now. Not anxious, not
Simon.
desperate, just there.
Gawas ka?
Daniel's jaw tightened
Ha?
slightly. Emotion nurse nodded gently.
Mugawas ka?
She needed someone, she said. Daniel let out a slow breath, and for the first time, he truly understood. This wasn't just loyalty. This was something more, something deeper, because that tiny puppy had refused to give up, not even for a second. Later that evening, Daniel finally stepped into the hospital room. The atmosphere was quiet, calm. Soft light filled his face, replacing the urgency that had once surrounded it. She was awake now, still weak, but conscious. Her eyes shifted toward him as he entered, a faint smile forming despite the exhaustion on her face. You came back, she said softly. Daniel nodded, stepping closer. Had to make sure you were all right, he replied. His voice was steady, but there was something behind it now, something heavier. Her hand rested gently against the blanket, just inches from where Milo lay curled beside her. The puppy stirred slightly, lifting its head. The moment it saw Daniel, it sat up, alert, but not tense, just aware. Daniel looked at it, a small, quiet smile forming. Hey, partner, he said softly.
Dali, ghost tali.
Tilted his head slightly,
Dali, kim,
as if
dali,
recognizing
dali,
the
ghost tali.
voice.
Lag tali,
Then,
lag tali.
without hesitation,
Dali, lag tali.
he shifted closer to the woman again, pressing gently against her side. Still protecting, still staying close. Daniel's smile faded just a little, not from sadness, but from something deeper. She followed his gaze, her fingers moving slowly to rest against Milo's fur. He never leaves me, she whispered. Daniel nodded once. I know, he said quietly. There was a pause, a quiet moment where nothing needed to be said. Then, thank you, she said. Daniel blinked slightly. For what? Her eyes shifted toward him fully now. For listening to him, she said softly. For not walking away. Daniel didn't answer right away, because he remembered that moment, standing there, debating whether to leave, whether to ignore it. His chest tightened. I almost did, he admitted quietly. Her expression.
Ang gamay, oh. Gamay. Si Mama Gamay.
Gamay na, si Gamay. Gamay na, nga nanay.
Ang katubig? Oh, kuha sa tatubig. Wala. Gusto niyo ano? Jud pakuan. Sige, dilag din na. Sige, oh. Tubig, oh.
Tungtungan ng mga bagong pangalan.
Ah.
Oo, tungtungan. Until.
Ano lang? Anak lang, oh. Anak, oh. Sit ya, sit. Tanaw lang. Anak. Bantayan lang gamay. Ikaw bitaw mga anak, ibantayan ka nila. Tiago, Gamay. Diba? Hmm. Bro. Laga? Laga? Lag tali. Lag tali. Dali. Lag tali. Noon tayo maliwat sa panisilahan, no? Nagdunggan. Rela kuko. Gaya sa interval ay. Palagon sa mga sila.
German Shepherd emerged from the snowstorm alone, limping, his coat matted with frost and old blood. He was never meant to be found again, but deep in the frozen forest, behind a truck engulfed in flames, 3 police officers lay bound and silent, left to die. At 8:15 a.m., Officer Luke Carter walked into the veterinary clinic carrying his canine partner, Rex, clutched tightly in his arms, his hands trembling, his breath breaking apart. Rex, once the most fearless German Shepherd on the force, the dog who had taken bullets meant for Luke, saved countless lives and stood beside him through every storm, now lay helpless on the cold steel table, his body shaking, his strength fading with every shallow breath. When the vet lowered her voice and whispered, "There's nothing more we can do." In that moment, Luke felt the ground vanish beneath him. The diagnosis was final: terminal organ failure. No treatment, no miracle, no time left. The department had already signed the euthanasia papers. Officers gathered in silence, each one saying goodbye to Rex for the last time. Then something happened. Something that made everyone in that room freeze. Rex suddenly lifted his trembling paws, wrapped them around Luke's shoulders, and pulled him into a desperate, heartbreaking hug. Tears streamed down the German Shepherd's face as he trembled, crying, refusing to let go, as if begging Officer Luke to understand something. The room fell silent. The vet stood frozen, the syringe steady in her hand, preparing for the moment no handler ever wants to face. Luke's voice broke apart. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." And then, seconds before the injection, the doctor suddenly leaned closer. Her expression changed. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then the doctor saw something so strange, so impossible, that she immediately lowered the needle and whispered, "Wait. Stop everything." Everyone froze. What happened next shocked everyone in that room. Stay with us, because this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Officer Luke Carter had faced armed standoffs, burning buildings, and nights so dangerous they made seasoned officers tremble. But nothing had ever shaken him like the phone call that came just after sunrise. He had barely stepped out of his patrol car when his phone buzzed. The caller ID made his stomach twist. Dr. Hayes, emergency vet clinic. She would never call unless it was serious. Luke answered, already sensing the worst. "Officer Carter, you need to come now," the vet said softly. "It's Rex. He took a sudden turn during the night. We're doing everything we can, but you should be here." The world around him stopped. The distant traffic noise faded, the morning breeze stilled. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Rex wasn't just his canine partner. He was family, brother, guardian, and the only soul who had walked beside him through every dark moment of his career. Luke didn't remember getting into the car. He didn't remember speeding through streets or running red lights. All he remembered was the pounding in his chest and the single repeated thought, "Please hold on, buddy. Please hold on." When he burst through the clinic doors, he immediately saw the faces of 2 officers waiting in the hallway. Their eyes were red. They stepped aside without speaking. That silence said everything. Luke forced himself forward, each step heavier than the last. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, mixed with something even more suffocating. Grief. Dr. Hayes met him near the exam room. He started struggling to breathe, she explained gently. His vitals dropped fast. We've stabilized him for now, but... Luke, he's very weak. He's fighting, but his body is shutting down. Luke swallowed hard, his throat burning. I need to see him. The vet opened the door. There, lying on a soft blanket, was Rex, his powerful German shepherd, once strong and unstoppable, now barely able to lift his head. His chest rose shallowly. His fur looked dull. His eyes, usually sharp and alert, were clouded with exhaustion. But when he saw Luke, something flickered inside them. Recognition, love, loyalty, everything that made Rex who he was. Luke dropped to his knees beside him. Hey, boy, he whispered, voice breaking. Rex weakly lifted his paw as if trying to reach him. And in that moment, Luke felt the weight of every memory, every mission, every heartbeat they had survived together. He knew this was the beginning of a goodbye he never wanted to face. Luke had prepared himself for the worst, or at least he thought he had. But nothing could have prepared him for how fragile Rex looked up close. The once powerful K9 who used to leap fences and drag suspects twice his size now trembled just lifting his head. His breathing was shallow, each inhale sounding like a quiet struggle, each exhale a fading whisper of the dog he used to be. Dr. Hayes placed a gentle hand on Luke's shoulder. His organ functions dropped significantly overnight. We've been giving him oxygen support and medication, but his body isn't responding the way it should. She hesitated before adding, we don't know how much time he has left. Luke's chest tightened. You said he was doing better yesterday. He was, she said softly. But something changed suddenly. This wasn't a slow decline. It was rapid, almost as if his body was fighting something we can't see. Two other officers, Sharp and Daniels, stood silently against the back wall. They had served with Rex for years, watching him save lives, protect officers, and take risks no human could have taken. Sharp wiped his eyes discreetly. Daniels kept his head down, jaw clenched. Luke reached out and stroked Rex's fur. I'm here, buddy, he whispered. I'm right here. Rex blinked slowly, as if gathering enough strength just to acknowledge him. His ears twitched at the sound of Luke's voice, but the rest of his body barely responded. Dr. Hayes checked the monitor beside him. Vitals were unstable, heart rate flickering irregularly. He's still trying, she said, but we need to prepare ourselves. His body may not hold much longer. Luke's heart sank. A cold wave of reality washed over him. He had always believed Rex was invincible. The dog had survived knife attacks, gunfire, freezing nights, intense heat, collapsing buildings, things no ordinary dog could endure. But this was different. This was something he couldn't fight for Rex, something he couldn't protect him from. As Luke continued stroking his partner's fur, Rex suddenly shifted, letting out a weak, aching whine. His paws twitched slightly like he wanted to stand, but his body refused to obey. Luke steadied him immediately, keeping him from collapsing. It's okay, Luke whispered, voice trembling. Don't push yourself. The room fell into a heavy silence. Even the machines seemed quieter, as if they, too, were holding their breath. Luke looked at Rex's fading eyes and felt his stomach drop. This wasn't just worse than expected. This was the kind of moment no officer was ever truly ready for. Luke had always prided himself on being composed. Years of police work had hardened him, taught him how to keep his emotions hidden behind a steady voice and a calm expression. But standing over Rex now, watching the rise and fall of his partner's weakening chest, that composure shattered like glass. Rex let out a soft, broken whimper, the kind that came from deep pain, physical and emotional. It cut straight through Luke's arm. He couldn't stand still anymore. He
Nauglag.
lowered himself until he was sitting on the
Nauglag,
beside Luke's
eh.
empty.
Nauglag,
Then
no.
gently pulled Rex's head into his chest. Come here, boy, he whispered, voice shaking. Let me hold you. Rex used the last of his strength to shift his body toward Luke, nuzzling his face against his officer's shoulder. Then, slowly, so slowly it looked like it hurt, Rex lifted his front paw and draped it around Luke's arm. The room froze. Sharp covered his mouth. Daniels turned away, shoulders trembling as he fought tears. Even Dr. Hayes
Yan,
stood
buwas.
ahead, wiping the corner of her eyes.
Ano po?
Rex wasn't just leaning into a hug. He was
Hindi,
giving
ano?
one. Luke
Hey.
held him tighter, bending his face in Rex's fur. You're my partner, he whispered.
Ko-
My best friend. You saved my life more times than I can count. His words broke off as a sob escaped him. I'm not ready to lose you. Rex's breathing hitched, his body trembling against
Nahalan
Luke's,
to karon.
but he didn't pull away.
Pinya
He pressed
iyabang.
himself closer as if trying to
Good.
comfort Luke, even though he was the one dying. Luke felt Rex's tears on his arm, hot, heavy drops that slid onto his sleeve. Dogs weren't supposed to cry like that, not unless they were in unbearable pain or unbearable fear. Each tear felt like a goodbye. Dr. Hayes stepped forward with the injection tray, her expression heavy and conflicted. She had seen dozens of euthanasia cases, but never a bond like this. Never a dog that hugged his handler with such desperate, heartbreaking clarity. Luke, she whispered gently. He didn't look up. He just held Rex as if letting go would mean losing him forever. Rex's heartbeat thudded weakly against Luke's chest. Irregular, fading, but still there. Luke finally pulled back just enough to cup Rex's face in his hands. I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm right here. Rex blinked slowly, nuzzled his officer's cheek one more time, and the entire room raced for the moment no one wanted to face. Luke kept his hands on Rex's fur, grounding himself in the warmth that was fading too fast. As the vet stepped back to give him time, Luke's mind drifted, uninvited, into the past. Memories surfaced like waves crashing against a shore he wasn't ready to leave. He remembered the first day. He met Rex at the K9 Academy. The dog had been a wild, untrusting 2-year-old with scars on his muzzle and more attitude than obedience. Most handlers avoided him. A few even suggested he was untrainable. But Luke saw something else. Fire, intelligence, potential. The moment their eyes met, Rex growled softly. But it wasn't aggression. It was a challenge. I'll take him, Luke had said without hesitation. Everyone thought he was crazy. Training Rex wasn't easy. He refused commands, ignored treats, and tested limits every single day. But Luke didn't give up. He spent nights sitting beside Rex's kennel, talking to him, earning his trust 1 inch at a time. It wasn't until the 3rd week, after a stormy night, that Rex finally rested his head on Luke's knee. That was the night they became partners. And then came the mission that sealed their bond forever. Luke could still feel the heat of that burning warehouse, the crackling walls, the suffocating smoke. He had been chasing a suspect when a collapsing beam trapped him inside. Disoriented and struggling to breathe, he thought he was done. Then through the smoke, he heard it. A fierce bark, sharp and determined. Rex. Ignoring the flames, Rex barreled toward him, teeth gripping Luke's vest, dragging him inch by inch toward the exit. The dog didn't give up, not even when the floor burned his paws or when falling debris grazed his back. He pulled with everything he had until they tumbled out into the cold night air. Luke had wrapped his arms around Rex, crying with relief. You saved my life, he whispered. From that moment, they were inseparable. Rex went on to stop armed suspects, find missing children, and shield officers with a bravery that made headlines. But Luke never cared about the accolades. What mattered was the dog who slept beside his bed, who nudged his hand after nightmare-filled nights, who understood him in ways no human ever had. And now that same dog lay in front of him, weak and frightened. Luke blinked away tears as the memory faded and the present returned with crushing weight. He looked down at Rex, whose breathing had grown shallower. "We've been through hell and back," Luke whispered. "You never gave up on me. Not once." Rex stirred slightly at the sound of his voice, as if remembering everything too. Luke pressed his forehead against Rex's. "I'm not giving up on you either. Not now. Not ever." But even as he said the words, he felt the fear clawing at his
Ano po di
chest.
katulo?
Because this was the one battle Rex
Katulo
might
na
not
po.
win. Dr. Hayes stood quietly for several seconds, giving Luke space to breathe, to think, to break. But time was running out, and everyone in the room felt it. Rex's breaths were no longer steady. Each inhale came with a faint rasp, each exhale with a tremor that made Luke's heart ache. The monitor beside him flickered inconsistently, sounding more like a countdown than a medical device. Finally, Dr. Hayes stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "Luke, we need to talk." He didn't look up. His hand stayed on Rex's paw, stroking the fur in slow, shaky motions. "His organs are failing," she continued gently. "We've given him every medication, every oxygen boost, every pain reliever we can. His body isn't responding anymore.
Nara po daw.
He's suffering. He's tired." Luke squeezed his eyes shut. The words were daggers he already knew were coming, but hearing them out loud shattered something inside him. "There has to be something else," he whispered. "Anything." Dr. Hayes shook her head with heartbreaking empathy. "If there were, I'd do it. You know I would." Sharp looked away, jaw clenched. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat bobbing as he tried not to
Sige,
break down again.
gatong nga ako.
Everyone in that room loved Rex.
Sige.
Everyone had been saved by him, protected by him, trusted him with their lives. Losing him felt like losing a fellow officer. Luke's fingertips trembled as he stroked Rex's ear.
Gitong galangguan.
"I'm
Ulan.
so sorry." Rex opened his eyes halfway and let out a weak sigh, pressing his head into Luke's hand. Even in pain, he was comforting him, just as he always had. Dr. Hayes stepped back and prepared the small metal tray. The clanking of instruments echoed through the silent room. She drew the injection slowly, her hand steady but her eyes full of sorrow. "When you're ready," she whispered, placing the syringe gently beside her. Luke felt his chest collapse inward. "When you're ready." But when could anyone ever be ready to lose the one soul who had stood beside them through every storm? He leaned closer, resting his forehead against Rex's. "You've done your duty," Luke murmured, voice quivering. "You saved me. You saved so many people. You were brave every single day. If this is your time..." His breath hitched. "I'll stay with you. I won't let you go alone." Rex lifted his paw again, resting it weakly on Luke's wrist. And as Luke choked back tears, Dr. Hayes reached for the syringe, completely unaware that something was about to happen that would stop everything. Dr. Hayes lifted the syringe, her hand steady but her breath shaky. The room felt unbearably still, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Luke wrapped both arms around Rex, whispering softly into his fur. Sharp and Daniels bowed their heads, unable to watch but unable to leave. It felt like the final moment. A goodbye no one wanted, but everyone was bracing for. But just as Dr. Hayes stepped forward, something unexpected happened. Rex's body jerked. A small twitch, barely noticeable, but sharp enough to snap Luke's eyes open. At first, Luke thought it was just a reflex, the final flicker of a dying body. But then Rex's ears twitched, his paw shifted, his breathing changed, stronger, different, like his body had suddenly reacted to something inside him. Dr. Hayes froze mid-step. "Wait," she whispered. Luke leaned back slightly, watching Rex with confusion and desperate hope.
Ito ka lulubi.
Buddy. The monitor beeped. Not a steady rhythm, but a sudden spike, followed by an irregular series of beats. Not a recovery, but not a final collapse either. Something in his body was responding. Something was resisting. Dr. Hayes lowered the syringe, her medical instincts overtaking her sorrow. She moved quickly to Rex's side, checking his gums, his pulse, his pupils. Her brow furrowed. This isn't a normal end-stage reaction, she murmured. His vitals shouldn't fluctuate like this. Sharp stepped closer.
Itong brown.
What does
Brown,
that
no?
mean? I don't know,
Itong.
she admitted, but it means we can't proceed. Not until I understand what's happening. Luke's heart pounded. You're saying he might not be dying? I'm saying something isn't consistent with organ failure, she corrected gently. There's a trigger, something inside him causing these responses.
Yeah.
Something we might have missed.
Yun na.
Rex let out a low, strained groan and shifted again, pressing his head harder into Luke's chest. His paw shook violently, almost as if he was fighting something invisible. Luke steadied him, murmuring reassurances. But his mind raced. If Rex was moments from death, he wouldn't have this kind of neurological response. He wouldn't be reacting so sharply to stimuli. Dr. Hayes quickly adjusted the monitor, watching the numbers jump unpredictably. His heart isn't shutting down, she said, eyes widening. It's reacting. It's responding to pain or pressure, something foreign. Luke's stomach twisted. A chilling thought pushed into his mind. One he hadn't considered until this very moment. What if
Pero ka gamay nga ko ano.
he whispered? Dr.
Pero
Hayes
ka
looked up
gamay.
slowly, the syringe forgotten on the table. What if?
Balahibo.
Continued, voice trembling. He's hurt, and we just haven't found it yet. And with that single question, the entire room shifted. Because suddenly, letting Rex go didn't feel like mercy. It felt like a terrible mistake they had almost made. The moment Luke voiced the possibility, the entire atmosphere inside the clinic changed. A weight shifted, a spark lit, hope flickered, fragile but real. Dr. Hayes immediately set the syringe aside and leaned over Rex, her expression sharpening from sorrow to clinical focus. She placed her stethoscope gently against his ribcage, listening intently. Rex flinched, not from weakness, but from pain. A sudden, sharp, involuntary jerk ran through his muscles, unlike anything they'd seen before.
Nananapod.
Luke felt Rex's
Nananapod.
body tighten under his hands. Easy, buddy, he whispered, but even he could feel the difference. This wasn't the slow pain of a dying dog. This was a reaction to something deeper. Dr. Hayes adjusted her position, pressing lightly along Rex's abdomen. Again, Rex flinched, harder this time. His ears flattened, and a muffled whine escaped his throat. Luke's heart pounded faster with every movement. That's not organ failure, Dr. Hayes muttered, half to herself. That's localized pain. Something is pressing on a nerve or shifting internally. Could it be infection?
Ikaw, hapit na
Daniels
po ka.
asked from the back of the room, his voice careful, hopeful. No, she answered quickly. Infections don't cause sudden neurological spasms like this, and his blood work yesterday didn't show signs of severe sepsis. She pressed gently against Rex's ribs. Rex's entire body tensed, his breathing pitching sharply. Luke swallowed. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the door swung open and a tall man in scrubs entered. A visiting veterinary specialist who happened to be at the clinic for surgery training.
Lucky.
Dr. Patel. He glanced at the monitor, then at Rex, then at Luke kneeling beside him. What's going on? He asked, stepping forward. He was moments away. From euthanasia, Dr. Hayes said quickly. But he's showing abnormal pain responses, something we might have missed. Dr. Patel knelt beside Rex, his hands moving with practiced precision. He palpated Rex's side, along the ribs, down toward the flank. When he reached a certain spot, Rex yelped, a sharp, sudden cry that made Luke's stomach twist. There, Dr. Patel murmured. It's not systemic organ failure. It's focal trauma. Luke felt the
Nakatubig.
air shift. Trauma, as in an injury. A deep one, Patel said. Something internal. Could be a rupture. Could be a foreign object. But he's not shutting down. He's reacting. His body is trying to tell us something. Rex shivered against Luke, his breathing quickening. Luke instinctively wrapped an arm around him, steadying him. Why didn't we see this sooner? He whispered. Dr. Hayes shook her head. Because his symptoms mimic
Turkey.
total organ
Real
collapse.
turkey.
And he's a working dog.
Real
He
turkey.
hides. Pain. He pushes through.
Bilbel.
Probably has been for days. Dr.
Belbel.
We need imaging immediately. X-rays, maybe ultrasound. If something is inside him, we have to find it before it kills him. Luke's pulse
Dali, Bilbil.
thundered in his ears.
Dali.
Rex wasn't dying
Dali.
from nature taking its course.
Dali.
Something inside him was killing
Dali.
him. And they were about to
Dali.
find out what. The clinic transformed from a quiet room of mourning into a frantic race against time.
Dali.
Dr. Patel signaled the technicians,
Dali.
and within seconds, a portable X-ray machine was wheeled in. Luke helped lift Rex gently onto the padded table, whispering reassurance with every movement. Rex whimpered.
Huwag mo gawas ni si Gamay. Kung ano ko ni. Kung mo gawas si Gamay ako ni
So the Women's 200 back will feature a chance for the record holder, Claire Perzan, who set that record earlier this season. It was back in November at the Tennessee Invitational. And she's in this champ field here to try to win this event as national champion for the second time and to win the second individual backstroke here.
Kasi Magis. Naka sa kwarto. Ano na yun?
Championships from Cal and so is Josephine Fuller for Tennessee. Meanwhile, two freshmen in this final field. Here's one of them, Alicia. Please have an impact this week. North Carolina State freshman. Of course, Curzon was swimming for Stanford when she won this 2 years ago. Separated them in the 100. That was Sims in the third best time this year.
Lagi ka mo tanaw Gamay. Idea.
The best time.
Ano mo biya?
But by the way, there's the defending champ. Is it just me?
Hindi mo kung tanaw. Kung awayong kang Gamay.
These champions, you really have. They just win 36 times. This feels like
Bilbel.
everywhere you look.
Dri. Dali, Dri.
Virginia taking the other second freshman to the field for North Carolina State is Erica Pelaez. That true freshman for North Carolina State, Craig Holloway. What is that? That's a different V, isn't it? That's the Roman Goose, right? Right, that is Virginia. That's a little swag tonight, really. Commemorating what they anticipate will be a fifth consecutive title. Bella Sims, who won this at the
Yung katubig. Gamay. Come on. Come on. Huh? Come on. Ali dali. Ali dali. Ay, tuwa na gamay. Musuko rin sa gamay ni mo. Tanaw ka. Ay, tuwa na. Hmm? Ini na pod next. Mga na. Karoon na pod na week. Ini siya. Aman. Ay, doon. Lah, ang balolo.
Yan ang mga gago. So kung hindi ka gusto ng bilatsing Iloy ka mababuyin ka, huwag ka mang baboy. Kaya hindi ako nag-una-una eh. Ayaw ko una-una, Gidya. Starting a fight will never let you win. Tingnan nyo ba ang bilatsing Iloy na Amerika? Inumpisahan niya si Iran, kaya ano ngayon ang nangyayari? Hindi ginaisip ni Trump na marami siyang mga facilities sa buong mundo na pwedeng maabot sa Iran. Si Iran wala namang facilities. Si Iran anong facilities yan kasi wala naman siya sa ibang mga opisina ng mga investment sa maraming lugar. Si Amerika madami ngayon. Ang damages naging create niya maraming nagpo-pull out na ngayon ng mga negosyante sa Amerika kay buang-buang si Trump. This is those people who tends to do something hindi sila nag-aisip kung ano ang magiging resulta. Ano ginawaran? Murder? Kutso-kutso sa sunod. Iwaran yung ko mapang ICC. Hindi nga pang barangay. Shout out sa reaction na YouTube channel. So ganito, sandali na nga. Pagkagulan ng kaso-kaso. Putangin na mo. Hindi ka mabububi na singiloy mabuti na makaso kasakit para magastusan kang gago ka. Hoy, inaplayan ako sa asawa kong bilatsing Pinoy mo sa Canadian passport kulol. Kasi panahon dito ngayon, papunta ko sa Canada. Ang next na passport ko, Canada passport na. So, wala ko pakialam bilatsing Pinoy sa kaso sa Pilipinas. Ang utak, di ba lang mga iyo di utak, wala kulos. Siguro sa akin Pinoy for the past 21 years. Pinakalas ko na nila pasaporte ang Pilipinas just enough na makakabot ko sa Canada. Pagdating sa Canada, hindi ko na kailangan ng Pilipinas. Palaluglo. Kaya I don't care. Pagdating doon, asawa ko ni Juan ni Brian, sila ng isang taon, 2 taon na mag-stay ko sa Canada. Mag-Canadian passport ako, gago ulol. Di po ito margagulan ng babae lang ako. Ano ako sa ang sipokrasiyot, ha? Kano'y gago babalo nga burunguton nga may puto. May aspa at may daki. Ang iyong burungot kung paano ka lang pasulin sa mga abogado ni Duterte. Ay wala akong ko'y pakialam na kasibukagin. Isa ka hamak na patay gustong pangakuan ka dugyot. Makurog ikaw sa'yo. Hanggang 2031 pa ang ano ko pasaporte ko. Enough. Nung makapunta na kami sa Canada, tapos pasaporte yan, sumasawa ko, gago. Bilaching iloy mo. Ari sa home, so bale, nilapastangan mo ang aming ama, ang aming presidente.
Maglana po,
Ito
ma.
ginawa mo sa matanda na 81 years old, ang putang pinaka. Dapat kagigiyag, dapat sa'yo kung ako lang din if I were to decide, bilaching iloy. Mabigilante kung sa kanya, inusnos kung sa kanya. Ipalutawon ka to sa may ano, sa may dinagani sa Taal Lake. Ang dapat talaga sa'yo, ginabugbog ka. So bali, ginanito mo ang tatay namin, ang bilaching iloy mo magastos ka. Tapos kinag-retaliate kami, pinaglaban namin si Duterte, mag-usara ka. Pakyo! So anong sabi ngayon sa mga nakarinig? Nga ang nakakita kasi nag-viral to, anong sabi nila? Hindi naman kami talaga kakaso-kaso. Karapatan naman ng mga Pilipino to say what they want to say, pero hindi na niimo na karapatan, bilatsing iloy. Wala akong nilagyan French fries, bilatsing iloy sa kaaway natin. Hindi ko sila nilagay sa kabaong, hindi ko pinagtripan ang kalpulangot mo na presidente. Hindi ko nilagay sa tangkal ang bilatsing iloy na si Romandes. Kahit pa si Auntie Claire, hindi ko nilipastangan ang picture ni Auntie Claire. Gago.
Tulog kayo ang anak mo.
Baka this is the best you can.
Anak ni Gamay.
Ay, ang mga Duterte, bilatsing iloy ng mga loyalista, at hindi. Kung hindi ka bigagong di puta, babalo anak
Nasukso
mo
pa
sa
kung
islo kapatid.
diri.
Wala ka sa trabaho, ang tinapos mo ay school sa mababang paralan sa Bulacan. So, bali, okay lang di puta, kabastusin mo ang mahal ng presidente. Putang ina ka. Akalain mo ginanito mo ni Misan. Wala akong ginagawa picture sa kalaban na oposisyon. Hindi ko si Auntie Claire ginawa, bilatsing rin, kaya may kapadala sa akin sa mga videos. Sa mga picture ng si Auntie Claire, ginagawa nilang aso. Tapos si Juan si Kulamot, ginagawa nila na aking. Tapos aso si Claire na dinapakain sa nilibin. Hindi ko kapos, I don't like it. That is so childish. Gagawin mo ang mga AI na yung mga ganito. No, ang gusto ko balitaktaan, utak sa utak. Pagalingan, kabilatsing iloy sa pagka-street smart. Pagalingan tayo punta sa debatianay. Kung sino sa atin ang manalo, bilatsing iloy sa mga words natin. Sino ang mas magaling di puta ng teorya? Sino sa ating bilatsing iloy ang magaling talaga na magribakan? Ganon. I do not believe in this fucking bitch for what? This is the exact fucking shit of defamation. Ako yan, criticize lang po ni sa kaaway natin, logically and objectively. Sometimes subjectively, yes. Because after all, I am just human and I also get hurt. Kapag ginabirada nila si Sarah at si Tatay Digong. Pero ikaw binatsing iloy mo sa dapat palampasin ko, hagaku ulol, ito ka, hindi ka totoo pala, supot kang binatsing iloy mo kasi takot ka gani magpapaltak. Takot ka magpa-circumcise, nagago ka nga 3 inches ang iyong titik. Ang mga ganito, wala sa matinong tao ang gagawa nito. Atakihin mo ang intelligence ng isang tao. Atakihin mo ang kanyang point of view. It's okay. Questionin mo kung ano ang ginawa ni Tatay Digong sa drug war niya. Pero kung pangina ka bully, ito ang totoo na bully. Hindi ko nilagyan bilatsing iloy. Sa French fries, si Kulangot, siya ang naglagay sa Kulangot sa sarili niya. Hindi ko ginawa yun di puta, scorpion or talimbabaga si Claire. Kahit lang yun di puta ni nga si Juan, si Maligno, ganit na ginagawan sa ang itsura yun na daw si Fiona, hindi ko kapos, hindi ko believe in that shit. Dapat sa akin talino, pagdagulang, pagitugang, ang eleksyon. Kung sino sa atin ang magaling talaga na spokesperson. Di ba kita yung who is going to end up as the best debater and best speaker? Pinatigilo, iyan palang galing tira kasi kawawal. Bakla ang putang ina. Baka inakaway mo gago. Pinatigilo, ang kakaway mo na uterus, ikaw may itlog ka man pala. Putang inang itlog plus ang gago. Yung gago yung punder. Iyan yung itlog. Pinatigilo, nagkakot ka kabukres and you think you pwede na case against me? It's going to stop me. Pabasting and when Sarah wins, every one of you who did this this to her father, you may paglalagyan, hindi ka lang sa bilibid. Hindi ka lang sa munting lupa, doon ka lalagay sa iwahe. Kung ito ang totoo talaga. Kita nyo ako guys na ano nyo, did you notice? Wala ko galagay mga picture, ayoko na ganun. Kung ano na yung kanilang kapangitan lang, yun ang ilagay ko. Pero yung i-ano ko sila, ilagay ko sila dyan, nagagawin ko, ilagay ko sa kabaong. No, I don't believe in that shit. That's very childish. It means you are losing the argument. It means that you have nothing intelligent to say anymore. If you are resorting to this kind of fucking bullying, ibuli ka. The way you look, na totoo mong look. Ibuli ka, bilat singiloy sa katangahan mo. But I am not going to resort to something imaginative. Wala kong ganun. Bilat singiloy kang support ka sa bagay, hindi ka na magpatuloy, gago ka kasi takawit ka na. Di po ka, babae na mag-aaway mo, isang nanay, 47 years old, may 4 na anak. Babae, si Bugres, putang ina kasawan, si Bugres, siyo pa. Uy, kaso, gago. Bilat singiloy mo tapos, pagkaso mo sa puki, paskil mo kaagad, bilat singiloy mo kaso kay Bugres. Para hindi maabutan kang bilat singiloy mo. Kung palang, may gapusas na sa'yo, ilan naging kaso sa'yo sa mga kwan ni Tatay Dibo. Akala mo titingnan ka ni Baste? Ayun, no? Akala mo palalampasin ka ni Pulong? Ayun, no? Palalampasin ka ni Kitty? I know. Excuse me. You want to have a fucking bardagulan? Let's bardagulan for all the fucking care in the world. Patali-talinuhan tayo. Bilang sila ko, kung wala na sa ganito, ako sa roon, if you think it's
Lucky,
going to
Gamay.
shut me up now,
Lucky.
it is going to fucking fuel me as much as I want. It is going to make me more inspired na lasak-lasak punta ka. Damahin ko tatay, nanay, anak, at lahat na mayroong sa involvement sa'yo. It's not going to stop me. Excuse me. You know what I mean? Dapat tali-talinuhan lang mga kwanta ba na, di ba yan? Ito doon sa school ko na. Kabumbahan na tayo. Hindi mo kumatalo bilang singiloy sa bardagulanay lang. Ilagay mo ang katapurma sa kandidato mo. Kaya ilagay mo ang katapurma sa kandidato ko. Tapos dyan tayo magbiradanay. Anong klaseng katapurma meron siya? Ano ang mga aligasyon na meron ang iyong kandidato? Kasi aligasyon sa kandidato ko. Ano ang ebidensya na may meron ang aking kandidato? At anong ebidensya meron? What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with these people? Every time they are losing an argument and every time they're losing the fucking fight, they tend to do the hair. Mapakaso ko, pinatsingiloy mo eh. Expert ako sa kasuanay, pinatsingiloy ka. You're not my first rodeo. Excuse me. Mga bubo. Correct? Kapag nabalikan ang mga yudiputa, iyakin ka, iyak agad ang diputa nga bating. Ang bilat singiloy nga supot. Subali pala hindi ka pala mag-react sa bilat singiloy mo kung ikaw. Sa palagay mo may karapatan ka nga babuyin. Ang aming tatay may karapatan din kung babuyin ka. Ipagtripan din natin pati anak mo. Ilagay din, ano kaya ang mararamdaman mo kung may maglagay sa anak mo pagtripan? Ilagay sa kabaong tapos puntakan doon sa school yan. Ang anak mo tapos ibuli. Ano kaya maramdaman mo? Kaputang ina ka. Pwede ka lang magsalita na ganito narinig ko. Pwede kung karapatan mo yan bilang Pilipino. Bilang siguro ka magagal sa french fries, paano na lang di? Kung may magkapon din ng french fries na mainit sa anak mo dahil sa inis sa'yo. Ang mangusin mo di puta ka, itong mga tinatawag ko wala substance ang kanilang content, walang intelligence ang kanilang content, wala sa reason. It is okay to argue, it is okay to lobby for the people that we think that we think would lead us properly. I might be wrong, you might be wrong, I might be right, you might be right. Wala naman talaga right and wrong dito ngayon. It is always a possibility. Depende na lang yan sa atin kung paano natin sila talunin, paano tayo manalo. Even in court, there is no yes or no answer. It is always a possibility. Kaya nga i-present mo pa bilang siniloy ang iyong ebidensya. At ipaglaban mo, ipresenta mo sa korte sa mga juror kung ikaw ba ay kapani-paniwala. What is the very thing that a judge and jurors and witnesses and whatever in the court of law ang tinitingnan sa katao kung meron ka sa pinaglalaban? What is the first thing that the court would seek? Credibility.
Siguro siya na siya.
Yan ang credibility.
Duha nung
Hindi mo
kaadlaw
wala ka sang trabaho.
nagpulaw
Jobless,
nagpaabot ng alas
addictos.
3.
You cannot even commit
Ang sayo na
yourself
lang
to one woman.
mga
Hindi mo pa
nakaroon.
manindigan, di puta ka mga inanakan mo.
Kamulaw.
Addictos ka pa ang putang ina ka, hindi ka nakatapos ang pagkaaral. So, anong kredibilidad meron ka, magnanakaw ka, hindi ka makadiputa sa mga call center ulit kasi wala ka sa medical na negatibo ang metapitamin. So, anong kredibilidad meron ka?
Yara ka.
Hindi mo maangat putang ina ang buhay mo sa pagiging bilat singilay
Ayos,
na
Saka.
tambay. Ganon yun ang labanan. Ako, alam nyo, kung hindi ko matalino, hindi man ko yung mag-present dito ng kaugaling ng sarili ko kung alam ko na I am going to run out of words, reasons, comprehensions, and dedication when it comes to influencing people. If I knew that I wasn't enough, you know, when I do the defense for the people that I actually believe that would lead us to a better future, I am not going to alisgar myself here. You know what I mean? Hindi ko mag-appeal din kung ako chararap. Pero alam ko kasi na matalino ako. Hi, Janice! Magkano prices sa t-shirts? Okay. Which one? Which one sa t-shirts ang ma-recommend ko sa iyo yung may handle na gold? Or ang middle nito na classic na Victorian? Lapas na nga, no, di puta ang tigulang tapos bilatsik iloy ka. Abay nga biradakon, taka maakusar sa... Hindi ko na tinatablan, di puta sa akusar. I have 20 solicitors that is backing me up. Ate ka, mahal ako ng mga DDS, baka nakalimutan mo. Mahal ako sa mga Duterte supporters ng mga abogado, wala pa ko bayad.
Okay guys, cut off kasi palubat na. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Ano sa akin sa ilang mga law firms? Siguro may mga 10 law firms na